Thank you, Interim Dean Aker-Rich. To colleagues and guests on the podium, assembled family members and guests here in the Dean Dome, and especially to our graduates, greetings. And first off, let me add my congratulations to a long list of congratulations that you have already received and are sure to continue receiving over the next few days. Today is a big deal in your life. It represents a lot of hard work pursuing excellence, which is one of our key values here in the School of Education, and we are so glad to be with you here today. My job here today is to introduce Mark Kleinschmidt as your 2016 commencement speaker, and I'm very excited to do that. I'm excited for two main reasons. The first main reason is that Mark Kleinschmidt is one of us. He is a member of our Carolina family. He is a School of Education alum, and he has experiences across his career that intersect with each of the groups of graduates sitting in front of me right now. Like many of our bachelor's degree and licensure degree students, Mark has sat for exams in Peabody Hall. He has faced the first day of student teaching, and he has faced his first day of teaching in the classroom. He has, like many of you, maybe understood that while his curriculum game and his pedagogy game is on point, he might have needed a little more instruction on how to write a disciplinary referral. Mark taught for 5 years in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system and was awarded in 1997 with the honor of being Teacher of the Year at West Mecklenburg High School in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he brings that experience to everything that he does. Like many of our advanced doctoral students, Mark also pursued an advanced degree here at Carolina. He graduated with a JD law degree in the year 2000. And like many of you with advanced degrees moving forward, he has looked to put that degree to use in ways that reflect our school's dedication to equity and excellence in the public sphere. Mark has contributed to our broader community as a voice in the community, a board member for nonprofit organizations, and a volunteer advocating for marriage equality, sensible gun control policy, death penalty legislation, litigation, and other issues. And finally, a group dear and dear to my heart, our school administration students, MSA folks. Mark has provided leadership in the public sphere that balanced his commitments with the political realities and organizational realities of governance. Across multiple terms on the Chapel Hill Town Council and over 3 terms as mayor of the town of Chapel Hill, Mark has worked to ensure that Chapel Hill has continued to earn its reputation as one of the best places to live, work, and play in North Carolina and the country. The second reason I'm excited to introduce Mark Kleinschmidt as your commencement speaker today is because he is one of my friends. We have known each other since 1988 when we came here to Chapel Hill in the first class of North Carolina Teaching Fellows. Mark Kleinschmidt is responsible for bringing me to my first Carolina basketball game. It was a Duke game. We won. Mark and I also lived together as we were first-year teachers in Charlotte. And as some of you already know, and as some of you are soon to know, the friendships and relationships you have with your fellow teachers, especially across your first few years, are some of the strongest friendships you will encounter in the course of your life. Now, I'm not telling you about my friendship with Mark because I want you to think that I'm amazing or a wonderful person, although if you would like to think that I'm an amazing and wonderful person, that would be perfectly fine. But because when you see a resume such as Mark's and see the honors and distinctions that have been awarded, it's easy to see them as relatively simple things that show up on a piece of paper. But I've come to introduce Mark and to vouch for him as someone whom I have worked with and known for a long time, whose leadership skills have been tested, whose commitments have been questioned, and who has found the determination to persevere through that and contribute to his community and the greater society. I've been having a conversation with Mark Kleinschmidt since 1988, and I am so excited that you get to begin one with him today. So please welcome to the podium the Honorable Mark Kleinschmidt.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Eric. That introduction means a lot. You go through life doing what you do. And sometimes there are moments like these when you're reminded of just the power of what it means to be living a life that you hope is one of goodwill. And it's one of those moments. Thank you so much, Eric. I'm thrilled to be here with you today, here at my alma mater. the School of Education, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. When you leave here, you will say all of those words too, every time you reference where you graduated. Because they sing in the mouth, don't they? I hope you practice that today. When you leave here and after ceremony tomorrow, you get good at saying it. Your friends, your family, they know that you're worth that already because they've known you for a long time. But when you speak those words for the first time to someone you've never met before, you're credentialed. You know, when I graduated in 1992 with one of those light blue robes on, we didn't have this kind of a ceremony, a special ceremony. I imagined, though, that if we had a special ceremony for the School of Education, it being the height of Whitney Houston's career, that a commencement speaker would have probably begun their remarks with words like these. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Right? You know, those beautiful, wonderfully sweet and sappy words that have absolutely nothing to do with the challenges that you face once you leave here. See, when I graduated in 1992, we believed that that's all that being a teacher was. I'll say I. Eric probably understood it better than me. But I believed that's what all a teacher was. To be in a classroom, to be in love with your content and your curriculum. And you were going to drill it into the head of every young person who walks into your classroom. And we bemoaned at the time those who claimed the teachers had all this other responsibility. And we said, why are you making us be parents in the classroom? Why are you making us be social workers? Why do we have to be police officers? That's not what we went to school for. Well, I was fortunate enough to get my first teaching job at West Mecklenburg High School, where I very quickly learned that Whitney Houston's words were not all that there was to being an educator. Because doing those other things were, and I know, and I believe this to be true today, a part of what it means to be an educator. I worked in a community that was plagued with violence and crime. I had children in my classrooms who were, in my first year of teaching, just a year younger than me. I had students in my classrooms who had drug problems, who were on probation. It's the only reason why they showed up that day. I had students in my classroom who were parents themselves. I had children in my classroom with disabilities that they had lived with for more than a decade and a half that had been unidentified by the people who surrounded them. No social worker, no teacher, no parent, no loved one. And they suffered from a disability that was not being accommodated for. These kind of things made it very difficult to be a teacher. And I quickly learned that yes, I was a social worker. I was often law enforcement. And sometimes I had to be the parent. Because it's hard, I learned, to teach the quadratic formula. Now, I wasn't a math teacher, but someone was teaching that. The periodic table, again, don't know much about. Shakespearean sonnets, which I left to Eric, or even my specialty, the three branches of government. If you didn't recognize that you also had that other work to do. Because I was a social studies teacher. The job that I had was to teach young people how to be good citizens in that environment I just described. So you imagine that. My largely impoverished classroom, who came from families that were touched by the criminal justice system in ways that I could have never appreciated at the ripe age of 14. I was teaching them to be good citizens, part of which means that when a law enforcement officer approaches you on the street, you're supposed to say, "Yes, sir." It's a challenge to teach that kind of citizenship in a Whitney Houston kind of way when reality is pouring down on the shoulders of these young people. Now, I don't mean to be to make it more difficult for you. You just finished exams. You've had the hardest few days of your life to date, probably. The most difficult ones, at least academically. But please know that there is an extraordinary challenge ahead of you. And those of you who are just returning to school to advance your education, you already know that. But you leave here with a blessing that you, like I, will be able to say that you are grateful that the School of Education at the University of North Carolina is your alma mater, your nourishing mother that has prepared you for the realities of that job. Whether it's teaching a quadratic formula, the periodic table, a Shakespearean sonnet, or the three branches of government, or managing teachers who are doing the same, you are all of those things that a child needs you to be, or you teach none of that. Because of that, there is some truth to Whitney's lyrics. The children are our future, but you are our today. And I need you today. Don't worry, I have a lesson plan for you. So as I was preparing for this, I decided to go through those most important documents, of course, that that come out of Raleigh, those instructional documents, including state legislation, like a law, like North Carolina General Statute 115C 81G. You all familiar with that one? And social studies teachers, you should be familiar with that, because that is also called the Founding Principles Act. It's passed by our legislature in 2011 to make sure that you, social studies teachers particularly, or math, or any of you, science even, can put the founding documents on the wall. Now, some people in the legislature were concerned that our students weren't being taught the principles in our founding documents. Well, they weren't being taught in my classroom. And so I looked then in that other great document, the North Carolina Standard of Course of Study for Social Studies, to look to see where these founding principles and the documents that they're part of are incorporated in there, as I was thinking about the lesson plan I might leave you. Because I think you should take advantage of North Carolina General Statute 115C 81G and post those founding documents in your classroom so that you can remind yourself of this lesson that I'm telling you today. Because one of those documents should be, I commend to you, the Bill of Rights. You know that document, right? If you were in my economic, legal, and political systems class, you would know what they are, what the Bill of Rights are. You could probably recite all of them. I'm sure many of you can right now. Let's just recall the very first one, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Some of you might be able to recite it with me, I'm sure. It goes something like this. Now, you can just imagine Whitney Houston, but I'm not going to sing it. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Ladies and gentlemen, I commend to you the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And I ask that you do as suggested by the North Carolina General Assembly and post it on the wall of your classroom or your office or wherever your workplace is going to be. Because it provides you the direction that is necessary to survive having to be all of those other things that you didn't think you were going to school to do. It tells you that you need to speak, that you need to publish, that you need to assemble when necessary, that you need to petition, and sometimes, and maybe more often than you might think necessary, you need to pray. Those 5 things will help you survive. Now, are you ready for those things? The faculty here may have prepared you adequately, but you should reflect on whether you need to do anything remedial in order to fully be able to exercise those 5 freedoms. Are you ready to speak? Are you ready to be the voice? In many cases, the only voice that can speak to the inequities that are existing in the classroom that you're in front of? Are you prepared to be the voice and speak the truth about achievement gaps? The readiness of the first grade child and his or her preparedness to start in the North Carolina public schools? Will you speak to the inequities between our rural and urban classrooms, to the fact that this room is not filled with light blue robes, and the need that our state has for it to be? Will you publish the truths that come out of your classroom to let others know through journals, through your alumni newsletters, through letters to the editor? When policymakers aren't adequately funding your work and that you are having to dive into your own pocket in order to make a complete education happen in your classroom? Are you prepared to let people know, speak and publish those truths? Are you ready to assemble? Are you ready to join with each other in associations? To stand up to what has now become the constant drumbeat that against our profession? When questions of tenure and academic freedom are actually open questions in the halls of legislatures, are you ready to assemble in the grass in front of the Capitol? Are you prepared to stand together in the heat of those limestone tiles that sit in front of the state legislative building? You aren't unless you have that red shirt. Do you have a red shirt in your wardrobe? I know we're all Carolina, but if you don't have your red shirt, you need to get it now. Because when we assemble, we need to see you in it. And when we gather in those places, are you prepared to petition for the change that's necessary? Are you prepared to insist on pre-K investments for the children of North Carolina? Are you prepared to insist on tenure security and adequate compensation for you and your colleagues? Are you prepared to petition and insist on access to basic nourishment to meet the food insecurities of the children who come to your classroom every day? Because it's only you who are noticing that child is coming back hungrier on Monday than he was when he left you on Friday? And are you prepared to ask for help from elsewhere if need be? The First Amendment gives us that freedom to pray or not. And I know we're here in a public institution, but I'll tell you that it's helped me. And I know I've needed it on many occasions in order to adequately exercise the rights, the other rights enumerated in the First Amendment. Pray that others will learn from your example as you exercise those rights. That your leadership will bear fruit. That your true public service as an educator will facilitate that change that's necessary. You know, I don't have a whole lot in common with Zebulon Vance. You all want to know who he is? He was a governor of North Carolina back in the late 19th century. And he spoke about the first investment that the state legislature made to teacher education in North Carolina, when they allocated all of $2,000 whole dollars to a summer school here at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill in order to prepare teachers. And he spoke about that investment as a good thing. He said that with such a project, we can electrify the state from Cherokee to Currituck. That's probably all I have in common with Zebulon Vance. But he's right. The investment that's made here at this school in you, that has, for decades past, and hopefully will for decades into the future, if you can remember the burden that you carry into the classroom and exercise those freedoms that you are given as North Carolinians and as Americans that do not evaporate because you suddenly call yourself teacher, if you can do that, you will electrify North Carolina. You will electrify all 100 counties. You will turn our children into the future. You will create a better North Carolina, a better America, because you will have insisted on being here and present today. I know you can do it because your School of Education at the University of North Carolina graduates a most loving, nourishing mother. I congratulate all of you and your families and friends who are here today to share this time with you. And I look forward to all the contributions that you are about to make as you become the new North Carolina. Congratulations, all of you.